The discussions have continued to revolve around incidental elements of the problem. If we get back to the 1976 reform of the local government system, the focus is very clear on what the local government system can be. And it is because the reform, the spirit of the reform, has not been carried along in the course of the system that we've lost it all. The spirit of the reform in 1976 was that the local government system should be the government that every other person should be involved in, whether you're residual there or not. And that it should have been populated by like people who have almost retired and were bringing in their wealth of experiences back to the local setting so that they can then groom new human capital to take over and move over in the course of their development. This is the spirit of the 1976 reform. By the time that the military intervened, there were sufficient physical regulations that, controlled activities at the local government. But now that we're in a democracy, there are so much self-sustaining regimes, laws and regulations that all these things we're talking about now are just because we're running away from the fact that the second tier of government has usurped the political, the economic development of this country, consciously or unconsciously. And it is really, for me, the tier of government that should actually be called to question. Because the second tier of government, those made up of the governors, is the tier of government that has ridiculed our democracy. And I'm glad that history in the last 20 years has shown to us, gives me satisfaction that all former governors are paying the prices for their misdemeanor when they were in office. Because the governors, when they're in office, have continued to float this idea of federalism. It is in such a way that it's so quack, so unfounded, that they only give it the strength to make it convenient for them to usurp federal power and also the local government power. They don't allow the federal government to superintend over activities that are on concurrent list. They insulate them states from the local government to function, and then they hold on to everything, and at the end of the day, they're not doing anything to promote development in its entire facet. Why I'm saying this is because if you look at the second tier of government today, it is the only inorganic structure we have. Because since the amalgamation in 1914, the two protectorates have become organic. And since the amalgamation, the local government systems have functioned under a different arrangement, where the local people, the counties, then were made up of people of honor in their respective domains. They were having their police, they were having their dispensary, they were having their court and everything, and security arrangements, just like Professor was saying. So we left that and then jumped into a dramatic definition of federalism, not knowing that the Nigerian version of federalism, it did not evolve. It's mechanically created. And because of the phases of the mechanical disruptions, we don't have a set rules of, set of experience that we have acquired in the course of time. And so anybody comes in now with his idea of federalism. Nigerian federalism is a national federalism, because 90% of the regulations of this country are packaged in the constitution by the National Assembly. Every single rule you make in Nigeria translates to the local government. It's effective. That's national federalism. The kind of thing that the states have called customary reform cannot function here because we didn't have that background. And so if you have found ourselves where we are now, we should make the best use of what we have today. That the national federalism defines that we are all tiers of government, the federal tier, the second tier, and the local government tier. If the third tier of government, which is the local government, is allowed to function, the definitions of corruption that is continuously always a focus of why local government are not allowed is a runaway concern, because let's remove the log in our eyes before we talk of the speck in the other person's eye. Because corruption is more endemic, with due respect to the federal government, the first tier of government, because they have over 50% of the funds of this country. The second tier has the next highest share of funds in the local of allocation, even though people like to call it as feeding spoon stuff, democracy. Let's discuss what we have. Let's not theorize. What we have now is what we have. Let's make use of the best things we have. What do you do when you have this kind of situation, when people are not taking responsibility for what they're supposed to be doing on behalf of the people of this country? So if the local government system is allowed to function, we will have complete re-engineering of the Nigerian state in a manner that people will be more attracted to go and take political control of their local government. They will know that anybody coming to look for their vote will negotiate with the principal stakeholders. It's not for the governor to stand in his state government office and determine who will be a senator, who is a house rep, who is house assembly, who will be a councillor, who will be a chairman. That's what the second tier of government has become. It has become a sub-2 coup plotter. And because of this, their disposition, they always forget to they'll be out of office after 8 years. And they have become victims of what they have planted over the years. Indeed. So how would you now say a senator will have his political career determined by a governor? The president almost has his political career determined by a collection of governors. So something must be done to separate and limit the power of the second tier of government, because they are the most mechanical link between the organic communities and what the Nigerian state has become as a national federalism. So if there is any tier of government that really needs to be questioned, it's the second tier of government. We need to checkmate it. And I think, initially when the AG took this case to Supreme Court, I had my reservations, because the best approach to this is that we have enough senators and House of Representatives who are victims of former governors' problems, former governors' interventions and machinations. And they are fearing also too that what's going to come out in 2007, that they would rather amend the constitutions fundamentally in the areas of election. I have always been for the national local government election. The most important election in this country is the local government election. And it can be conducted. It was conducted in 1999, and it brought us in. It brought us in almost as independent candidates. You were going to be fielded by your party because you are going to be able to win an election against a contesting opponent. If we concentrate on the issue of funding, and we don't bring in the context, the element of election, we will not get it right, because you're sending government into a leaky of a governor who can put in anybody he wants, and he will still take the money through another means.
Now that you've talked about election, I just wanted, there's an ongoing conversation or debate around who should conduct local government elections. Is it the CX that should continue to conduct it, in which case you have seen that every party in power at the state level determines who takes those seats, or should INEC be brought in? That discussion is ongoing. Where do you stand?
My stand has always been that, like the FCT, you see, the INEC conducts the affairs of the local government elections in INEC. And you can see how interesting the elections in the FCT is. Very dynamic, very fluid, very people-oriented. People make up their minds on what you do. You understand me? You have an SDP candidate winning election, you have a PDP chairman winning election, you have APC candidate winning elections. It's very mixed up and very, very active, because there is a sufficiently independent organization that is not controlled by anybody conducting elections in FCT. If the National Electoral Commission is allowed to carry out the election in the local government system, we would have planted the seed for the new democratic setting at the local government areas of this country. It will now put the local governors, the governors, in their proper place. And they will know that they will not have the capacity to determine who will be the local government chairman. And so if you send money to that person who has been elected independently of the super influence of the governor, he will act to be able to sustain his goodwill with his people. But as long as we don't bring in the independent arrangement for the election of the local government system, for that long too, will the local government system continue to be an appendage of the state. Okay.